There we are. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Sorry we're starting a little bit late this morning. Had a few internet issues. Thought I could straighten it out by restarting my router, but I don't know. I guess we'll just kind of see how it goes. I'm Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm here with Dan Smith and Catherine Clement, and we are the Mindset Mastery Collective. This is our Saturday morning mastermind. We get together every Saturday morning, and we study different books on personal development. And right now, we are going through the book, The New Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. Just in case it's your first time here, if you at any point in time would like to jump on the panel here with us and discuss the books that we're talking about, you can join our community at mindsetmasterycollective.com. That is our Google Plus community, and there's a post in there that that says if you'd like to participate, just a comment below. We've had a couple of people that have been interested in participating, and for one reason or another, we just haven't brought that together, but we are interested in having more people participate. So anyway, I'll just kind of say who I am and where I am. I'm Samantha Studebaker-Carl again, and I'm out here in beautiful Southwest Georgia, and I'm glad to have you guys on. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And Catherine, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Dan, and we'll get started from there.
Hi, I'm Catherine Clement, and I'm here in Boulder, Colorado, and it looks like it's going to be another rainy day today. I think you guys east of me better look out. We've had some bad storms for the past few days, so it's coming your way.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Smith. I'm from Boise, Idaho, and we're having actually it's going to be a gorgeous day here in Boise today. So welcome, everyone, and just appreciate you coming today. Thanks.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be up in the 90s today down here. It was like last week was really nice, wonderful weather. It was in about mid-80s, and it wasn't real humid or anything like that. It was real, just beautiful out. And although the weather is beautiful right now, it's humid. I feel like there's just this weight of humidity pressing down on us, but it's still wonderful. They finally got the pool open, so we may be trying that out this weekend. But okay, so let's just kind of review just slightly what we talked about last week. See if I can get to my page. I'm not going to go into it too much because I'd like to spend the majority of our time, just kind of moving forward. But I did want to just kind of mention we're in Chapter 8. And let me get back here a little bit to the beginning. And okay, so in Chapter 8, we've been talking about the success type personality and how you can acquire the traits of a successful person and become successful yourself. And so we've talked about a few different ones. Let me just kind of briefly go over the list. Sense of direction. Of course, if you know where you're going, you know what you want out of life, you're going to have a much better chance of achieving that. Understanding. That's the one where we were talking about, having understanding for, other people, and well, maybe that one wasn't that. Let me look at that real quick. Okay, understanding was all about communication. Sorry about that. You cannot react appropriately if the information you act on is faulty or misunderstood. So we were talking about understanding exactly what it is maybe that you're trying to communicate to people, or understanding exactly what you're trying to accomplish, and working with other people in order to accomplish those things. We talked about courage and how you need to be able to step outside your comfort zone if you want to be able to move forward in your life. If you're trying to accomplish something new, you're going to have to try new things in order to make that happen, and that takes courage. Charity, also compassion, and of course on that subject, when we talk about charity, we aren't talking so much about giving in a financial way. We're talking about having compassion, charity and compassion for other people and where they are in life, and understanding that when something happens relating to you with another person, it's not because that person's out to get you or anything like that. It's just because that's the place they are in their life, and for you to just have that compassion towards others, knowing that everybody's in the place that they need to be in their life, and that we all are moving forward and going after the dreams that we are going after. And And everybody's at a different level of growth, and just having compassion toward one another, so that you can, not have so much stress in your own life. I don't know, you guys want to add a little bit on that one?
Well, yeah, we talked about a little bit last week, just about accepting other people, but also accepting yourself, and having some charity towards yourself, in that we accept other people for who they are, and for the mistakes that they make. Well, we're human too, and sometimes you have to extend that grace and that acceptance of yourself, and to recognize that you are a human too, and that when you do make a mistake, we talked a little bit about this last week, that the language that you use towards yourself, you're your own worst enemy, and you say things to yourself that really a horrible person would say to somebody else, that really, you kind of rip yourself a new hind end, if you want to put it in that kind of rank terms. But that there's a language of acceptance that we need to learn towards ourselves, and to be charitable towards ourselves, and the words "I am" are two of the most powerful words that exist in human language. And so how you start out, if you make a mistake of some sort, you screw something up, no big deal, but how you describe yourself to yourself, and the terms that you use towards yourself, when you say a statement like, well, I am such a screw up, that your subconscious mind really can't take a joke, and it takes everything literal. And so when you make a statement to yourself about yourself like that your subconscious accepts that, and then tries to act upon that and bring that into reality. And you're really self-perpetuating the idea that you are a screw-up, when in fact, yes, you are a human being. Yes, you may have screwed something up. You may have made a mistake. But don't use that language to describe yourself to yourself. You can say, yes, I screwed that up. Yes, I made a mistake. But don't say, I am a screw-up, or I am a mistake, because of the subconscious ramifications that comes from that. So let's see. Just look at my notes from last week, but yeah, I mean, give yourself a little bit of grace. Give yourself some leeway to make a mistake. Don't take yourself quite so seriously, and learn how to laugh at yourself a little bit more often, and just takes a lot of the pressure of life off. So that's what I got for right now.
I agree, Dan. It's we are hard on ourselves, and sometimes when I get in a situation, and if I find any kind of negative chatter like that, which thankfully I'm getting better at that part, but if I do find any, I try to think, okay, if my son or my daughter came to me, or my best friend came to me with these complaints, how would I respond to them? Or these challenges, how would I respond to them? And I find myself to be much kinder to myself when I do it in those sorts of terms. And it's interesting why we can jump on ourselves, so fast like that. And even for something and I'm going to say as simple as stress, but stress is not simple. Stress can ruin people's lives. And everybody has stress, but it's just how do you cope with that stress. So even in what I've started really trying to practice this last week is that when I find myself in a stressful moment, to really just take a few minutes to give myself like a self-hug sort of thing. I mean, not literally, but to really just recognize that as, hey, this is your body is showing you emotions and feelings and vibrations that are saying, I need some love right now. And to really just give myself that love and get myself through that moment without judgment of, oh, well, now you can't even handle stress and all that kind of thing, because you can really go down a rabbit hole on some little things. So that's what I've been practicing this week. Thanks.
I like that suggestion of you saying, if you're saying these things to yourself, you come into yourself as if you know, if you've got a problem or a frustration or whatever, I like how you said, you know, pretend as if you are talking to your friend or your son. I think that's really powerful because, yeah, I mean, we talk completely different to people outside of ourselves sometimes than what we do to to ourselves. That's powerful. So I like that example, Catherine. Okay, so then the other ones that we were kind of talking about was esteem and, of course, self-confidence. We've kind of touched on that a little bit. And let's see here. I think we are getting into self-acceptance this time. So we're going to talk more about dealing with self-criticism and then getting into the secret of the AQ, which is the Adversity Quotient. So if you've never heard of that, that's going to be real interesting to talk about. And then we may just finish out this chapter today because there's not that much left to go through. But yeah, let's just go ahead and jump right into the self-acceptance versus self-rejection. And well, before we do that, I just kind of want to remind everybody that, you know, if you have not, you know, if you're kind of new to this hangout and you haven't read the beginning of this book, I encourage you to do so, because the whole premise of this book is that when you can change the way that you see yourself, then you can become anything that you want to be. And this whole chapter is about identifying those traits of successful people and adopting them for yourself as a part of your self-image. So I encourage you definitely to go back and read the beginning of the book so that you have a full understanding of how you can take these traits and adopt them to your own self. Okay, so we're going to start on we're in chapter 8 on page 150 with self-acceptance versus self-rejection. And by the way, guys, I don't think that the train has gone by this morning. Let me ask my husband, has the train gone by today? No? Okay. The train hasn't gone by, so if it starts to come along, I'm just going to have one of you guys take over on the reading, okay? Because it gets very loud. Okay, so self-acceptance versus self-rejection. Many people admit they can't stand rejection from others. Otherwise, capable sales professionals, for example, will be stymied in their careers by the inability to emotionally handle the inherent truth about most selling situations. You get more no's than yeses, more rejections than acceptance. Authors, playwrights, actors, athletes, coaches have all crumbled under the weight of criticism and rejection from the public or the media. But this kind of rejection is almost insignificant in impact compared to the awesome destructive power of self-rejection. People reject and demean themselves in many ways. Women frequently reject themselves because they do not conform to the current fashion or standard for physical proportions. In the 1920s, many women felt ashamed of themselves because they had breasts. The boyish figure was in vogue and large breasts were taboo. The fashion trends reversed directions, and now many young women develop anxieties because they do not have 40-inch busts. In the 1920s, women used to come to me and in effect say, "Make me somebody by reducing the size of my breasts." In the 1960s, the plea was, "Make me somebody by increasing the size of my breasts." This seeking to be somebody is universal, but we make a mistake when we seek it in conformity or in the approval of other people. This mistake can have very serious consequences. The thin ideal, for example, has led women to anorexia and even to death by anorexia, as the celebrated case of talented singer Karen Carpenter. This is just one example. People reject and demean themselves by comparing themselves to any number of artificial standards. They go deeply, irreversibly into debt, attempting to hurriedly keep up with a colleague, relative, or neighbor. Many people say in effect to themselves, "Because I am skinny, fat, short, too tall, etc., I am nothing." Or because I am thin, or because I am not as thin or rich as she, I am zero. I think this was the Duchess of York who once said, "You can never be too thin or too rich." But for most who suffer from anorexia, a physical disease manifested by the self-image, would differ. Instead of self-rejection, you must strive for self-acceptance. This means acknowledging that you are a unique, one-of-a-kind composite of strengths, weaknesses, knowledge, and ignorance, experience, and naivety, naivety, accomplishments, and unrealized potential, and is so and so is every other individual on the planet. Carefully peel back the layers of life of any person you might envy and view yourself as inferior to, and you will find a set of flaws and frustrations different from your own, but guaranteed to rival your own. Donald Trump has the Midas touch in real estate, but to date cannot seem to sustain a personal relationship. The current golden boy of your favorite sport may be basking in the spotlight for a moment, but may also find it impossible to adjust to a career that ends while he is still in his 30s, while yours may be just taking off. We all must strive for self-acceptance in our own way, even if only a minority can achieve it. Accept yourself. By all means, engage in self-directed, legitimate self-improvement, but also be yourself. You cannot realize the potentialities and possibilities inherent in that unique and special something that is you if you keep turning your back on it, feeling ashamed of it, hating it, unfairly comparing it to false idols, and refusing to recognize it as your greatest asset and ally. That is such a powerful little section right there with so many things that we can talk about with, you know, comparing yourself to what the ideals of the media, you know, says. And, you know, with that example of in the 1920s, you know, women were trying to have smaller busts, and in the 1960s, women were trying to have larger busts, you know. And you know, I remember my mom has super curly hair, almost like poodle hair, and when she was a teenager, it was not fashionable to have curly hair. It was, you know, if your hair was not just completely straight, you know, that was just out, you know. And so she was constantly trying to straighten her hair, and of course back then they didn't have straighteners, so she's like using big cans and rolling her hair around it and doing all these crazy things to straighten out her hair. And I, you know, I remember thinking, gosh, here I was, you know, in the 80s when curly big hair was the big thing, you know. I'm like, I couldn't imagine going to that extent of trying to, you know, make my hair be completely straight. But yet at the same time, when I was a teenager, I was trying to do perms and get more curly hair. And, you know, isn't it funny how when if you look back, you know, I can look back on like all these different pictures of, you know, previous times in our lives where everybody has this, everybody kind of looks similar in the way they dress and the way their hair is and all of these kinds of things, and it's, you know, it's interesting in some ways because, of course, obviously that is, you know, an indication of where in time or where in history those pictures are from. But yet at the same time, we think about these detrimental cases of people who, you know, have had extreme anorexia, or people who've killed themselves because, you know, they didn't feel like they fit in. And, you know, and it's just, I feel so bad for folks when they feel that way. And you know, I mean, for the most part, I've been pretty much, you know, happy with myself, but there have been times where I'm like, okay, well, you know, I'd rather have this or I'd rather be that, you know. And you know, I think the biggest key in a lot of ways, in my opinion, as far as happiness goes, is literally just being happy with who you are. You guys have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, I got a son that's, well, he'll be 33 here in just a couple weeks. But when he was like in the 4th or 5th grade, you know, he was a basketball player. And one day we was at a basketball game, and back at that time is in the well, that would have been real early 90s. Anyway, the bowl cut was really super popular at that time, and that's where I mean, kind of like Moe, the Three Stooges, you know. And so all of a sudden, I was watching this basketball game, and all of a sudden I realized that every single kid on both teams had the identical same haircut, because because that was what was in, you know. And I can go back in my own experience, you know, when I was in grade school. For a period of time, it was called pegging your pants, and what that meant was basically you took your pants and you sewed the inseam together to where they were tighter, and then we went to wearing stretch pants because you could sew them tighter, and so it'd take you like 10 minutes to get your pants on in the morning because they were so tight. And then basically from 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, that was what was popular. And I came into the 7th grade, and all of a sudden stovepipe pants were what was popular. And so you went from pants that was so tight it took you 10 minutes to get them on to pants that was so loose. And then that started the loose thing, and that was when bell bottoms came in, and then just regular bell bottoms wasn't good enough. People started sewing extra material into their pants to make the bells bigger, And so later on in life, as I really thought about, these different things that, like the example here in the book of small breasts and larger breasts, and my son's instance with the bowl cut, or with me back, it was all trying to achieve what I call cool. Everyone's trying to achieve cool, but somebody keeps moving the line. And when you can't accept yourself for who you are, self-acceptance, when your acceptance has to come from what you have, the style of clothes that you wear, then it's like, well, I went to school back in the 70s, or through high school. I graduated in 1973, and long hair on guys was where it was at. And so you grow your hair for 6 months, and you start to think that you're really cool. Well, somebody else comes along and they got hair that's 6 inches longer than you, and so all of a sudden you lost your cool because that person's way more cool than what you are. And so it's a transitory line. It keeps changing. Somebody keeps moving the line. And so just when you think you've arrived, they change the styles on you. They change the clothes. They change the hairline. And so I had to come to a point where I had to just be me. I had to accept me for who I was, and it didn't matter how long my hair was. And you can't see it from this angle, but I got a little bald spot back here. Well, I wish it wasn't there, but the fact is it's there. And as long as I'm, I can't see it, so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Well, I wished I had hair, but I don't in that area, okay? So I just got to deal with it. You deal with what you got. And if you're not happy, if you can't accept yourself for who you are, then it's a real problem. And, what I was talking about, like a salesman, when, I don't like rejection. I don't like, that was a real problem for me early on in life, as far as rejection, because your self-image is pretty much formed, believe it or not, by the time you're 5 or 6 years old. And then from there on, it's a self-conscious thing, or a subconscious thing that who you operate in life based on the subconscious thoughts that percolate up, and you will always act like the person that you perceive yourself to be. And if you act outside of that, then you go into an uncomfortable feeling in your body. It brings on fear, and so what we're really trying to do here, or attempting to do in reading these books and listening to the audios that we listen to, and making affirmations to ourselves, what we're really trying to do is to recreate the subconscious acceptance of who we are and what we're all about, that was really set, for the most part, by the time you're 5 years old. So it's conditioning of your mind, and how is your mind conditioned to accept yourself for who you are, or was it conditioned to accept yourself for what you have, for the different you can look at another person and say, well, gosh, I really wish that I was like that person. Well, the fact is that you aren't. So can you accept yourself for that? Seeking, when your self-image is weak, then and you compare yourself to another person and say, well, I wish I was like that person. Well, invariably what we do is we take ourselves at our weakest point, we compare it to another person's strongest point, and it widens the gap. And it makes it even that much more difficult to ever measure up to this ideal that, that we have in our mind. So really, self-acceptance is it's a point where we have to come to, and yes, work on yourself to make yourself better. But in the meantime, don't beat yourself up, and use yourself as a whipping post, so to speak, because you don't measure up to some ideal that somebody has. Going back to the whole, the bowl cuts for my son's basketball team, the style that I was going through back, going from skin tight pants to stovepipe pants to bell bottoms that was, 2 feet around at the bottom, and so it's self-acceptance, and it's come to a point where not accepting yourself for the clothes you wear, how long your hair is, the hairstyles, all that type of stuff. Just accepting yourself as a human being, for who you are, that you are a human being, a unique creation, a child of God, so to speak. So anyway, I don't mean to capitalize the whole conversation. I'll turn it over.
Well, I really lucked out somehow because I never got into all the trends and stuff. For one thing, I dropped out of high school at such a young age. I didn't have all that peer pressure to, I didn't do that whole experience. But I did build a sort of a persona around, like when I went to nursing school and I became a nurse, and I did that for so long. I definitely had my identity sort of built around that situation. And then the problem with that is when you, first of all, especially here on this internet, I just want to say, if you're comparing yourself to people on the internet, you really need to stop, because what I have found on the internet is that people don't always present themselves the way that they truly are. So you might be comparing yourself to something completely fictional. Is that a word? I don't know how to say that, but you might be really comparing yourself to something that doesn't even exist and cutting yourself down because you don't match up to that. So please stop that if you're doing that. And it's a little tricky because, we do believe in positive mindset, and we do believe in not fake it till you make it, but kind of not always necessarily facing reality in the moment either, but like envisioning where we want ourselves to be. So you don't ever really know where anybody is unless you can get somebody to just tell you the down and dirty, okay, what are you really doing, what's really happening in your life. So but on the internet, people present themselves in all kinds of ways. So I would just say, for sure, don't compare yourself to any of that. But as far as getting into trends, like I said, I really lucked out myself, and thankfully I was able to pass that on to my kids. My kids didn't really, we didn't have the money to keep up with trends. I mean, there just wasn't, we were too broke then. There was no question about whether anybody could have any of that stuff that the other kids had. So we were thankful for what we had. But I want to say something there, because sometimes, I'm definitely not speaking anything against gratitude. Gratitude is so huge. But be careful with your gratitude, because like you said earlier, Dan, the way that our minds work and our subconscious mind and how we focus on, how we bring it around and stuff, be careful that, like, be grateful, but then always be bringing in new things. Because if you're grateful for a crust of bread and you're just always grateful for a crust of bread and for having, the bare minimum of what you need, that may be all you ever get. So I just be grateful for what you have, but be trying to incorporate that you are open for bigger and better things all at the same time, and be grateful for those coming in as well. I don't know if that made any sense, but I'll let you go back to reading.
That's a powerful thought, Catherine. And I think that is true. I mean, because, like, in the book Outwitting the Devil from Napoleon Hill, he talks about drifting through life and talks about how, if you just kind of get complacent in your life and you're not actually trying to go after achieving anything more, you're just kind of drifting, you're just existing. Or in this book, I think it says somewhere, he quoted Thoreau, and a lot of people are just living their lives in quiet desperation. And, and I think that's kind of, is that kind of where you were talking along that lines, Catherine, of just, makes sense? Yeah, because I mean, and that's kind of why, and that's why we do all this personal development, because we are capable of being so much more than what we are. I mean, ultimately, we have infinite capabilities, we have infinite possibilities open to us, and of course, you can't pursue every single thing. I think in one of the last sections, it was talking about how we are not perfect. We're always going to be imperfect in many ways. We can strive for achievement in anything that we want to strive for achievement in, but if we are constantly comparing ourselves to someone else who is achieving something great in this area and we've never even worked on that, then that is an unrealistic comparison. Whereas if we are, if we're working in an industry where maybe we're working side by side with somebody and we're all doing the same thing and we all are learning the same thing and that sort of thing. I mean, maybe I wouldn't say necessarily comparing yourself to that person, but friendly competition is not a bad thing because you can push each other to become better. But when, we were saying about comparing yourself to a fictional character or somebody who may be fictional, I think that's what happens a lot of times when young women or women in general are comparing themselves to TV commercials or actresses, and I think that there was a thing on the internet not too long ago, I'm sure there's been dozens of them, where they've exposed what a picture in a magazine, what's been done to it to make that picture look the way that it looks. It's been airbrushed and parts of the arm have been minimized and blemishes have been erased and hair's been smoothed, or all of those different things, and that's exactly what that we're kind of talking about, is just if you're comparing yourself to an extreme ideal that isn't even real, then you're setting yourself up for failure on the side of your self-esteem. And so that's my thoughts on that. And I think that the most important thing, when I was actually, here's kind of an insight I had. I can't remember when I had it, but it was when I was younger, and when I think it was actually when I was in high school, and I noticed, everybody's all kind of dressing up and are trying to be so perfect and follow the trends and all of these different things, and perfect makeup and perfect hair. Every time I go into the ladies' room, everybody in there be re-prepping their makeup and redoing their hair and all of that kind of thing. And I was of the attitude of, I'm going to put it on once in the morning, and that's it. If it rains, I don't care. My hair gets all wet, and all that kind of thing. But what was funny about that is that, one of the reasons I came to that realization was because I saw that people were so focused on making a good impression to everyone else that nobody was paying attention to anyone else. They're so worried about themselves, they weren't paying attention to what you were doing. And when I came to that realization, I was like, I could do anything. Nobody really cares because they're too busy worried about themselves, And so that was a huge thing for me. It's just realizing that, it doesn't matter, and just having a good time and just being yourself, like Dan would say, just be yourself, But I did want to mention one other thing about the hair thing. It was funny, we took a family trip, a few years back, and we stopped at this one hotel, and at the time, my son was maybe 14 or 15 or something like that, and he was wearing his hair, that down in his face, and it was constantly flipping. It was like that short, just kind of, I don't even know what you would call it, but we went into this hotel, and the front desk clerk, she was like a younger girl, and she was like, "Are you Justin Bieber?" Because all the kids, they were looking like Justin Bieber at the time. But I don't want to mention that because one of the things you were saying, Dan. But do one of you, would you like to read the next section?
Where are we at exactly? I can read it.
We are on page 151 with The Secret of AQ, the Adversity Quotient.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll read that. Okay, for many years, IQ was the focus of academia and thought to virtually predetermine how far a person might go in life. We now know conclusively that it is not IQ that defines the area of the possible for the person, but self-image. We also know that IQ can be improved long into adulthood. There is what I call a part of the self-image or representation of the self-image that may be scientifically measured. Since 1967, a management consultant named Dr. Paul Stoltz has been studying how people respond to adversity. Through his in-depth work with over 100 companies, he has evaluated what he calls the adversity quotient of more than 100,000 people. Adversity quotient is a measurement of how people perceive challenges and how well they deal with them. Dr. Stoltz says that having a high AQ is increasingly important as the world gets more difficult to operate in. He routinely surveys his clients regarding the number of adverse events they confront each day, whether a delayed or canceled airline flight or a key client defecting to a competitor. He says that 10 years back, the average number was 7. 5 years ago, 13, nearly doubled in 1999 to 23. Dr. Stoltz defines people with high AQs 3 ways. Number 1, they do not blame others for the adversities or setbacks they confront. Number 2, they do not blame themselves either. They do not see setbacks that occur as reflecting poorly on themselves. And 3, they believe that the problems that they face are limited in size and duration and can be dealt with. Excuse me. If you compare these characteristics with what we've just discussed in terms of success personality as a trigger for the automatic success mechanism, you will see the compatibility of the ideas and Dr. Stoltz's findings. Can you raise your AQ? Absolutely. Dr. Stoltz's entire business at the corporate level is providing training programs that help entire organizations of people raise their AQs. His approach includes unburdening people of low AQ assumptions such as helpless, self-doubt, insurmountability of problems, and blame or guilt. I'm going to read that again. His approach includes unburdening people of low AQ assumptions such as helplessness, self-doubt, insurmountability of problems, and blame or guilt. This is much the same as modifying or strengthening the self-image. Unburdening or liberating is strengthening. You do not necessarily need to add to strengthen. You can strengthen by subtraction. This is not coincidentally, I'm going to start again. This, not coincidentally, is in total harmony with everything I've observed regarding people diagnosed with very serious diseases. Some people easily accept that their problem is of such overwhelming magnitude that they are helpless. They feel shame and guilt, and they blame themselves for being weak, and they blame others, God or destiny, for their condition. Other people, confronted with the very same debilitating disease, conform to the 3 high AQ characteristics and are very aggressive in taking on their condition in every way. From active research, self-education, and involvement in the medical care to finding ways to continue meaningful and fulfilling activity. I would observe, for example, that Elizabeth Taylor and Christopher Reeve are high AQs. Elizabeth Taylor has had several brushes with death, a number of medical operations, including hip replacement surgeries, undergone addiction rehabilitation at the Betty Ford Clinic twice before making it stick. Yet she has fought resiliently to keep her beauty, grace, and sense of humor. She has remained active in the entertainment industry, making a TV movie as recently as 2000, in business with a successful perfume line, and in charitable work, confounding the first major fundraising effort for AIDS research, or founding. Christopher Reeve, paralyzed by spinal cord injury in a horse riding accident, has continued with a successful and meaningful life as a loving husband and father, author, professional speaker, and director of movies, while just getting out of bed and dressed requires massive effort, hours of time, and assistance from caregivers. Do you want to stop there and discuss it, or do we need to just want me to read on through, Samantha?
Yeah, go ahead and read on through, because these next 2 are kind of stories that kind of push this point to home. So yeah, go ahead.
The fishing trip from hell. I was having lunch with several friends who had just returned from a fishing trip together. When I asked about the trip, they all chimed in, describing a trip marred by one catastrophe after another. Bad weather, their cooler full of provisions floating off in a river, one man's bout with stomach sickness, and on and on. And how would you rate that trip, I asked. Best trip yet, one man said. We had a ball. On this trip, they acted in a high AQ mode and made a success of a series of adverse events. If they could approach everyday life as they did their fishing trip, they'd all be happier and more successful 365 days a year, rather than that doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry. Rather than 5, I don't get why the 5's there. So
they were saying they'd all be happier and more successful 365 days a year rather than just 5 days a year.
Okay. That's kind of... Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so focused on reading here. So would we all. Of course, everyday matters may be more important than a comedy of errors weekend in the woods. Certainly, tragedies of life, such as serious illness or injury or illness, loss of love, etc., are far more important. Still, much of success has to do with expectation and response. If we are burdened with unreasonable expectations of ourselves from unfair comparison to others or insistence on perfection, or with unreasonable expectations of life itself to somehow be smooth sailing or wholly unsatisfactory, black and white responses to everything, these self-made burdens will crush us under their own weight. And then a fable of unburdening. I will end this chapter with a fable or a parable I have heard told several different ways. Think about how it relates to the liberation of your success personality. The story is told of an obviously weary traveler walking down a dusty road with a large boulder hoisted on one shoulder, a knapsack full of bricks on his back, a huge pumpkin precariously balanced on his head, and a nest of sturdy weeds and vines wound around his legs, so that he could only take short, hobbling steps. As you might imagine, this human pack horse is hobbled along uncomfortably, stooped over. His progress is slow and tedious. His physical struggle is great. A person sitting by the roadside called his hello and asked, "Say, traveler, why do you burden yourself with that big heavy rock on your shoulder?" Incredibly, the traveler said, you know, I never noticed just how heavy it was before, and until you mentioned it, I hadn't given much thought to my reasons for taking it with me. After a few moments pondering, the traveler set the boulder down, left it by the side of the road, and walked on a bit straighter, a bit quicker. A little further along, he encountered another bystander who queried him about the knapsack full of bricks. I'm glad you made mention of it, said the traveler. I really hadn't paid any attention to what was in the knapsack. He took out all the bricks, left them at the roadside, and walked on. A little further along, a curious child playing by the road called out to him, "Hey, mister, why do you have all those weeds wrapped around your legs?" The traveler took out his pocket knife and sliced away the weeds, one by one. The bystanders made the traveler aware of his needless burdens. So one by one, he accepted the new awareness, rejected the old burdens, and abandoned them by the side of the road. Finally, he was truly a free man, and walked straight and tall like such a man. Were his problems the boulder, the brick, the weeds? No, not at all. The one problem was his lack of awareness of them. A mental training exercise. Make a short list of the bricks and rocks you are carrying around. Get actual bricks, and with a marking pen, write one emotional burden on each brick. Put all the bricks into a knapsack or a duffel bag and put it in the back seat of your automobile. When you leave your home each morning, take the bag out and heft it a few times and say to yourself, "Today I am leaving my bricks in the car. I will go about my day without carrying these heavy bricks around with me." When you arrive home in the evening, get your briefcase or your belongings out of your car, but leave the bag of bricks there. and say to yourself, I will relax and enjoy my evening by leaving the bricks behind.
Well, that is a powerful suggestion there with, I like those two stories because I think that a lot of times we do carry around these emotional burdens that, other people will see, but yet you don't see for yourself for some reason. Isn't it interesting how you can, you can look at your sister or your mother or a good friend or whatever, and you can pinpoint exactly what their problems are, But yet when it comes to yourself, for some reason, you just don't see them. You just go through your day and you keep on doing the same things and saying the same words, and the same crap keeps coming out of your mouth, or the same thoughts keep popping into your head, and you don't realize that those are some of the problems that are causing you the issues in your life. And for example, I know that everybody has experienced this at one point in time. You're at work and there's always this one person who they can't leave their problems at home. They bring them to work. They complain about them all day. They say about how horrible their life is and this and that and the other, and you're like, you're making your own life miserable. You're doing it to yourself, and yet they don't realize that that's what they're doing. And I think that this suggestion of course you've got to recognize to begin with that you have those things going on in your life before you can write them on a brick and carry them around with you symbolically. But if you could do that, how powerful would that be to be able to recognize those things in your own life and, let them go. And, and I find it interesting also, where it was talking about just slightly before that, where it was talking about the fishing trip from hell. And so many times we all have these experiences in our life that don't go how we expect them to go. And I can completely relate with the fishing trip thing. Is actually I went on a camping trip with one of my girlfriends and my sister one year, and we got there and we were having a mostly good time, and we went to go into town to get groceries or go to the movies or whatever it was, and we came back and it had rained, and we had left all of the windows open on the tent, and so everything inside of our tent was completely soaked. We didn't have anything, and we could have been like, oh, our trip is ruined and let's go home now, but we didn't. We were like, shit happens. Let's go find a laundromat and get it all dry, and then we got, we went and we did that, and we goofed off while we were at the laundromat, and we just made a good time of it. And and the thing is it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be on vacation in order to make things like that happen. When we used to live on the river, and we would have flooding. Every year there would be flooding of some sort. And sometimes it got bad enough that, I'd have to call off work and I'd have to, stay home so that, because we wouldn't be able to get in and out. We'd have to, our house was raised up so that the basement was actually above ground. And, I could have been like, oh, this is horrible, 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 but instead I was like, you know what, this is cool. I get a day off from work, and we get to sit here at the house and pretend like we're living on a houseboat for a day, And so it's all in how you look at things. We all have things that happen in our lives, but it's all a matter of how you perceive it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think it basically boils down to, do you require outside circumstances to make you happy? Because if you do, you're in major trouble. Because like you said, shit's going to happen. So we really need to find that happiness. A lot of, and again, going back to the internet thing, and I bring that up because here we are on the internet. Which this technology is amazing to me, by the way, because I still remember when you had to hold the rabbit ears just right to get the little black and white fuzz on the screen. So way back before color and all that. So this is truly amazing to me. But you can't, so many people say, well, when this happens, I'll be happy, or when this happens, I'll be happy, or if this goes just right, I'll be happy. You're going to be a very miserable person if you put those kind of limitations on yourself. You really need to find something to be happy about, and then if other circumstances come along and makes you even happier, then that's good. But it's a hard lesson to learn. I think sometimes people go through some really hard times and that's what they find out through that lesson. So it's, you know, all of us, sometimes it's easy to say things, but sometimes we have to experience them ourselves too to really get the message. You know, I mean, we like to, like with my kids, I would love to say, oh, well, I did this and this is what happened, so don't do that because that'll happen, and have them take my word, but it doesn't always work like that. But I think for me at least, and in all the books and stuff that I've read too, which has just confirmed it, but I sort of found it out through life experiences long before I found all these mindset books and mastermind hangouts and all that, is that if you hold the I'll say it in terms of vibration, if you hold the vibration, if you hold the emotion that you want to have, then things will come to you that have that vibration or have that emotion attached. So if you're just happy for no reason, things that make you happy will come to you. And if you're like sad, then things will come to confirm that. Because just like Dan said earlier, our subconscious is quite literal. So whatever we tell it, it responds to and like. And if we are unhappy, we'll find more things to be unhappy about. And if we're happy, we'll find more things to be happy about. So just to keep it really simple. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, you know, we tend to make mountains out of molehills, you know, the old saying. That I talk about my son every once in a while, and when he was really little, we might be sitting and watching the news on television and not even aware that he might be there on the floor playing with toys or whatever, not even aware that he was listening to anything, and they'd be talking about a disease on the television, and you know, I mean, that's basically a nightly thing on the news, and pretty soon, like half an hour later or hour later, all the color would drain out of my son's face, and he would have that disease. I mean, you know, he was convinced in his mind. I mean, and he would manufacture all of these symptoms. You know, they're talking about the symptoms, and just as a really little child, he would manufacture those in his mind, and pretty soon he'd have that disease in his mind. And even today, he still has this tendency to blow things. I mean, life's not just hard; it's real hard. If that makes sense, you know, it's hard squared and hard to you know, to the 10th degree. And you know, there's another old saying that things turn out best for those who make the best of the way that things turn out. You know, and so what is your attitude about what's happening to you in life? And you know, a lot of things that happen to us really. I mean, they can make you bitter or they can make you better. It all depends on the way that you look at life and look at circumstances. And like you know, when I was talking about Christopher Reeve and Elizabeth Taylor, you know, like I was talking about my son, you know, he could go off and lick his wounds and really desire that the world really feels sorry for him, and he feeds on that. You know, you should really feel sorry for me because life is really hard for me, type of an attitude, you know. And where you got Christopher Reeves that breaks his neck. I don't know if you have ever heard of Johnny Erickson Tata. She's a Christian author. She broke her neck in a diving accident when she was a teenager. And yet she travels the world and speaks. She's an artist. She writes books. She has a radio program on the radio every day, a couple minutes. At least she used to. I don't know if she still has a radio program. I haven't heard it in a long time. But you know, she took on life as a challenge, even though she can't move her arms. Somebody has to feed her. Somebody has to bathe her. When she goes to the bathroom, somebody has to take care of her business for her there. She can't move. She's in a wheelchair. But she paints with a brush between her teeth, and she's, like I said, she's an author of books. She's a speaker, and so, you know, when you got somebody that's really, for the most part, about 99% healthy, and yet they feel sorry for themselves because life is so hard for them, you know, and you should really feel sorry for me, and you should take care of me. And then you got a person like Johnny Erickson Tata, or Christopher Reeves, or, you know, Elizabeth Taylor, who has these monumental problems, real problems, and yet they go out and they kick butt in the world. You know, where's the justice in that? You know, I mean, I hurt my lower back jumping on a trampoline when I was in my early 20s, and I experienced some of the loss of life. You know, it was all of a sudden things that I used to do, as I was a real daredevil. I mean, I would jump off anything. You know, I took a lot of risk when I was young, and I pushed it to the maximum. And then I hurt my lower back. All of a sudden, you know, I had to give up snow skiing. I had to give up diving. I had to give up all these things that I used to really love. And I went through a period of really feeling sorry for myself for several years, you know, and I live in pain. I still do. I'm in pain right now from something that happened in my early 20s, you know, but there's a tolerance level where, yeah, I'm in pain, but you just live there. Catherine, I think you understand exactly what I'm saying, you know, that you just deal with it. And you could sit around and feel sorry for yourself, or you can just get it on down the highway and do the best you can with what you've got. And some days are better than others, but, you know, all days are good. So, you know, so anyway, yeah, I'll turn it back over to you, Samantha.
I like that quote. Things turn out best for the people who think the best of the way things turn out. I love that. That's awesome. I mean, that's exactly. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. You know, it's all about how you perceive things and how you look at life. And if you're constantly looking at or focusing on, so what we always say is what you focus on expands. So if you're always focused on all the negative BS that's going on in your life, you're not going to see the positive. Whereas if you see, you know, if you're focused on the positive stuff, you're not going to see the negative, and you have the choice. You can choose which thing you want to focus on, and you know, and allow that to become more in your life, whichever it is that you choose. So, you know, and that's why we study these books. That's why we you know, get into the personal development, and we want to become more like you know, the ultimate person that we want to be like, and we choose to focus on the things that are going to help us get there, and that's one of them. I want to be happy. I want to be, you know, sunshine to everybody that meets me. You know, that's what I want to be, and so when I focus on that, you know, I focus on the positive, then I see more positive stuff. And, you know, and like, you know, Dan was saying, and I know Catherine has mentioned it before, you know, that we've all had some sort of, well, maybe not everybody in the world, but a lot of us have some sort of physical something that has caused, you know, difficulties in our life in some way, shape, or form. And, you know, I had an incident, you know, a couple years back. I was driving a dump truck, and we were out on this job site, and it had all this big, huge, chunky gravel everywhere. And I stepped out of the dump truck and just stepped down wrong on this rock and twisted my ankle really, really bad. I mean, I sprained my ankle significantly. And, you know, I could have stopped right there and been like, okay, I'm done. You know, my whole day is ruined. Everything's, the whole world's coming to an end, you know. And, you know, but I didn't. I was like, okay, you know, okay, so I can't use that leg for a while, you know. I put ice pack on there, and I made it through the rest of the day, you know. But I can, you know, I mean, how many times have we all experienced, you know, you've seen somebody who's done something silly, like, you know, they've scratched their finger, and they're like, I'm done, I'm going home, you know. I'm like, really, guys? So it's all a matter of your perspective. It's all a matter of what you want to focus on it, you know. And if you want to have a positive life, if you want to be successful, you've got to focus on having positive things happen in your life, and focus on those positive things that do happen, because inevitably there's always going to be something not so happy that happens, you know. I mean, we've all experienced that, you know. Some people get in car accidents. Sometimes a tree falls on your house, you know. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. And, you know, if all you do is focus on those negative things, then you're just going to, that's what your life experience is going to be. But if you can focus on the things that are wonderful, then you're going to have a more wonderful life. So with that, guys, I just want to wrap this up. You know, next week we're going to start on Chapter 9, which is how to avoid accidentally activating your automatic failure mechanism. And of course, if you if you have not seen the previous sessions, you want to go back and watch the previous part of this whole book. Then of course we have the replays. It's just listed if you're on our Google Plus event page in the description on the I guess it's the right hand side of the page. Then in that description there's a link to our playlist for all of our previous Saturday morning mastermind sessions. I want to give you guys one thing before we go. Actually, let's see. I'm going to post this in our Facebook or in our Google Plus group, which is at mindsetmasterycollective.com. One of the things that I like to do is I like to listen to audios that are, you know, they're either affirmations or they have, you know, hypnotic suggestions or subliminal messages or those kinds of things. And I just got an email from one of my favorite authors, who is Joe Vitale, and he sent me a link to this one site from Dr. What's his name? Dr. Steve Jones, and he is a he creates these audios with subliminal and hypnotic suggestions for creating change in your life, and they're selling them for the Memorial Day weekend sale of like $1 each. So I'm going to post that link in the community if you guys are interested in getting any of those. I'm not going to earn any kind of commission for it. I just thought it was a great deal, and so I'm going to post that in there for you, but I wanted to let you know about it. So with that, guys, have a great, awesome, and amazing week, and meet us back here next week on Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern for the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Actually, just meet us in the community, mindsetmasterycollective.com. That's where we'll be posting the link to our event page next week. So with that, that's all I got. Bye for now.